In 1959, an atrocious murder in Florida shocked the entire nation. Police detectives searched for years, but never found the culprit. I'm Mr. Ominous.
And I'm Dr. Grimm, covering shocking histories
and darkest mystery.
From the undeniable facts
to personal experience, our channel covers all things ominous
and grim.
Mr. Ominous here. Follow me down to the Sunshine State for a look at one of the state's most notorious murders that's still a cold case. But I must warn you, due to the shocking details of this crime, listener discretion is advised. If you're a fan of shocking histories and dark mystery, find our next episode on your platform by following this podcast, sharing this episode with your friends, and giving us a review. Join our community of avid listeners at ominousandgrim.com for bonus content and benefits. That's OMINOUSANDGRYMM.com. And now, back to our story. Christine Walker certainly had plenty of pure sex appeal, maybe too much for her own good. In her small Florida community, the men went absolutely crazy for Christine. Whenever the opportunity arose, men tried their best to take liberties with Christine. They came to her house while her husband Cliff was at work, and they tried to kiss her, and more. They tried to manhandle her in dark corners when no one was looking. One smitten young man even carried a photo of Christine with him everywhere he went, and she never given him the photo. Sadly, no man seemed to care that Christine was happily married and the proud mother of 2 small children. And when it came to Christine, the lecherous men didn't care they were also married, or maybe they were just too old to chase after young women. At 24 years of age, Christine wasn't nearly as interested in other men as they were in her. She often complained to her husband Cliff that other men wouldn't leave her alone, and Cliff sometimes got into actual fights defending his wife's honor. With her bubbly personality, big smile, and beautiful curly brown hair, Christine Collins enjoyed much popularity as a drum majorette at the local Arcadia High School. After graduation, she kept her satin uniform as a treasured keepsake. As Christine Walker, her married name, she kept her great figure too, looking just as slender and beautiful as she did as a teen. A tall, quiet man with an intelligent face, her husband Cliff enjoyed working with cattle, hunting, and fishing. He liked to enter the calf roping competitions at the local rodeo, where he and Christine frequently attended. He won awards for his performances in the rodeo ring. In 1959, the Walkers lived in the tiny town of Osprey, Florida, best known at the time for cattle ranches and orange groves. The family lived in a modest wood-frame house, painted a cheerful white on the edge of the gigantic Palmer Ranch. Christine's husband, Clifford, worked as a Palmer Ranch hand for $55 a week. Cliff and Christine enjoyed a simple life with their small family. To outsiders, they appeared a young, good-looking couple, and Cliff earned a decent wage that allowed Christine to stay home with the children. From all accounts, she enjoyed her role as a mother and wife. She often told her mother she was happy with her life. In the month of December, Christine drove to town and shopped for Christmas gifts for the kids and other family members, which she carefully wrapped. The couple bought a live Christmas tree that stood on the back porch, waiting to be taken inside and decorated. She and Cliff looked forward to spending time with the kids over the holidays and to visit relatives that lived nearby. The couple also looked forward to the purchase of an extra car, a very nice late model Chevy Bel Air. They test drove this white and green car earlier in the day. But all was not well with the family. Only the day before, Christine complained to her mother about Cliff getting involved in a fight. It seems the guy wouldn't leave Christine alone, and Cliff got angry. He took a swing at the guy, and the two fought, which did not end so well for Cliff. Christine told her mother she thought her husband had come close to getting killed by the other man. On the morning of December 20th, Cliff's good friend and hunting buddy, Don McLeod, dropped by the house to pick up Cliff to go boar hunting. They had made plans for this trip the night before, and both men looked forward to the trip. Cliff had hunted Florida game all of his life, and he enjoyed the sport. Being very knowledgeable and athletic, he could skillfully tackle alligators, bravely move in stealthily for a kill, and skin the gator for food or to sell. And he would use nothing but his pocket knife for a weapon. The men planned to leave very early in the morning, just before sunrise, so McLeod arrived when the sky was still dark. After banging loudly on the front and back door and getting no response, McLeod suspected something was very wrong. He knew for a fact that the Walker family woke very early in the morning from habit, and yet the house now stood strangely dark and silent. Where was everyone? No lights shone from the windows, and no smell of breakfast coffee and frying bacon came from the house. Only one bulb glowed dimly in the rear. McLeod knew that was highly unusual. He also noticed the cow feed Cliff had picked up from the store the day before had not been unloaded from his work jeep. Cliff would never leave the feed out in the open like that in case of rain. Extremely worried, McLeod decided to investigate. Whipping out his pocket knife, he cut a small hole in the screen. Reaching through, he managed to unlatch the door. McLeod cautiously entered the house, and the shocking scene that met his astonished eyes would haunt him for the rest of his days. The entire Walker family had been brutally murdered. Their beaten, bloody bodies were sprawled out on the floor in different rooms. Horrified, he fled the house. Leaping into Cliff's work jeep, he drove like a madman to the nearest grocery store payphone to alert the police. Later, police officers viewed the grisly murder scene with dismay. In the kitchen, Christine's brutally beaten and lifeless body lay in a pool of congealed blood. The skirt of her red and white print dress had been jerked up around her waist. Her heavily bruised face had shown police she'd been punched repeatedly just before being savagely raped and then shot in the head, with 2 different handguns. Her bare feet bore testimony that she'd certainly fought desperately for her life. She'd used her suede high-heeled pumps as a weapon against her attacker, beating him with the sharp heel of her shoe. The shoes were splattered with blood, and each one was found in a different room of the home, as if she'd fought her attacker not just in one room, but through several of them. It was not apparent if Christine was alive or dead when she'd been raped. In the living room, Cliff lay sprawled on his back, his bloody cowboy hat still on his head, and a fatal bullet wound blown through his right eye. Cliff had been shot with a .22 caliber bullet. The shell casings that lay scattered on the floor were clearly marked with a distinct pattern from the gun's barrel. That alone should have provided a solid clue to the murderer's identity. But there was a big problem. Everyone in the surrounding neighborhood owned a gun. The community depended heavily on guns for protection and to hunt food, so finding the murder weapon could prove very difficult, almost like finding a needle in a haystack. After discovering Christine's body, the police found Jimmy, the couple's tiny son. He was huddled close against his dad's side, as if for protection. He'd been shot in the head 3 times. Streaks of blood on the floor suggested he crawled towards his dad's body while the killer shot him repeatedly. Police surmised that the assailant killed Christine first, then ambushed Cliff as he walked through the front door with the kids. Cliff probably carried baby Debbie in his arms and made an easy target. Police found infant Debbie last, clothed in a pretty plaid blue dress in the bathroom. She was face down in a tub that was partly filled with bloody water. She had also been shot once in the head. Police consider it strange the killer decided to drown Debbie after shooting her. It wasn't necessary to kill the children at all. They were too young to accurately identify their parents' killer, especially Debbie. Their murders were just an extra measure of cruelty. However, stranger things were yet to come. Not content with only taking the lives of every member of the Walker family, the killer had apparently stolen the couple's framed marriage license off the wall. Not only that, but the killer also took Christine's dark blue satin Drum Majorette uniform she wore throughout high school. Stealing such unique and personal items of no real value to anyone but Christine and Cliff suggested the murders were a crime of passion. Someone felt great angered that the couple were married and had children. Also missing were a carton of Cliff's cigarettes and his pocket knife. There again, items of very little monetary value. Police suspected the murderer was someone local, someone that knew the Walkers very well. Many clues pointed to that conclusion. First, the family's 3 dogs were obviously not alarmed by this person's presence and did not alert Christine, who was the first to arrive home on that fateful day in her 52 Plymouth. Second, Christine must not have been alarmed either. She knew the killer well. She thought of him as a good friend. So well that she probably chatted with him as she went into the kitchen, carefully put away the groceries and sodas she'd bought and put away in her purse. She even had enough time to prop up a Christmas card on the refrigerator top for display. All of this just before he attacked and killed her. Also, Christine parked her car in a different place than where she had usually parked. This suggested to police that the killer had parked his vehicle in her usual spot, and when she arrived and saw the other vehicle, she did not fear the person's presence. The very understaffed Sarasota Police Department came to the crime scene and, from all reports, badly botched the investigation. They made many mistakes. The police vehicles drove over existing tire tracks that could have been used for evidence. An officer stepped in a pool of blood and left a boot footprint that was later mistakenly identified as the killer's. Some promising investigative leads were never followed up or further explored, and key pieces of evidence such as a semen sample were somehow lost and never found. The above mistakes badly hampered the investigation and may be the main reason the killer got away with his crime. Police assembled a vast collection of almost 600 suspects, including family members, neighbors, a meter reader man, 7 men night fishing in a creek nearby, and 3 drunk men spotted walking near the Walkers' home. Sarasota police questioned many men and examined the .22 caliber guns in the neighborhood. They never arrested anyone for the murder of the Walker family. Meanwhile, all 4 members of the Walker family were laid to rest in the peaceful cemetery, where the palm fronds whispered and the long tendrils of Spanish moss waved gently in the breeze. But the family members and the police detectives could not rest. They needed to find out who did such a horrible crime. They needed answers, especially the family. After a few months passed into the new year of 1960, new evidence came to light. Bloody clothes belonging to the Walker family were discovered in an old shed nearby. A skirt and a blouse belonging to Christine, and 2 men's shirts and a pair of pants, stained with dried blood, were wadded together and stuffed inside of the shed. Did the blood belong to the Walkers or the killer? But at the time, there was no DNA testing. However, the bloody clothes proved to investigators that the murderer did not live far from the Walkers, and was well known by the family. One person of interest in the case was another family member, Albert Walker, a cousin of Cliff's. Albert spent a lot of time with the Walker family. He even lived with them for a short while after being discharged from the U.S. Army. According to witnesses, Albert acted strangely after the murders. He sobbed broken-heartedly and wailed like a banshee. He even fainted a couple times, once at the funeral. Concerned family members carried him unconscious from the church. However, he passed a lie detector test, and in 2005, DNA tests proved him to be innocent, just like McLeod. Albert said later that he and Cliff were very close, like brothers, and that's why he was so horrified by the murders and overcome with grief. Hickok and Smith, the notorious killers of the Clutter family in Kansas, were even suspects. Authorities traced their movements and determined they had passed through Sarasota about the time the Walkers were murdered. However, both men passed lie detector tests, and a bloody fingerprint found at the scene did not match either man. In 2013, the bodies of Hickok and Smith were exhumed. DNA tests proved neither man proved to match the evidence gathered from Christine's body that night. Detectives thought the doomed couple met the pair of killers to buy a car, but this seems rather far-fetched. Strangers would not have been interested in stealing the marriage license and the majorette uniform. Police investigators believed the killer was someone that the children could possibly recognize. That's why the little ones were killed. The list of suspects continued on and on and on in the sleepy little Florida town. But police investigations seemed to go nowhere, and nothing could be proved. One man, a 65-year-old retiree named Wilbert Tooker, certainly, ardently, admired Christine. 40 years her senior, Tooker talked about her constantly to friends, and seemed absolutely obsessed with the younger woman, and Christine was very afraid of this man. One neighbor that lived nearby claimed they'd spotted Tooker. He was near the Walker's family home on the day of the murder. Also, later DNA tests from the man's descendants were taken. Results had proven that Tooker could not be ruled out as a suspect. Christine's extended family knew how she feared this older man who had made some serious advances toward her. Christine had complained to her husband and her friends about this threatening behavior many times. Several times, Cliff angrily threatened Tooker and warned him never to come to their house again, or to speak to Christine. But the police never formally charged Tooker with the deaths of the Walker family. The murders created a fear frenzy in the small town. Neighbors and even family members suspected each other, and suspicion turned into paranoia. Soon it seemed as if every man in Osprey had become a suspect in the Walker murders. Wives suspected and openly accused their husbands, ex-husbands, and boyfriends. This rampant suspicion started a lot of arguments between couples. Then the wild rumors began to spread through the small town. Christine's friends came forward with tales of the murdered woman's recent miscarriages. They talked about how Christine wanted to know how to end a pregnancy. Did this mean she had a lover on the side? Was that information even true, or just another rumor? People gossiped about why the killer stole the marriage license and other items. Why would anyone want an old majorette's uniform? Was the murderer an old high school sweetheart? Another person of interest to police was a high school boyfriend of Christine's named Curtis McCall. Some townsfolk claimed he had been in love with Christine for many years, and Curtis knew more about the murders of the Walker family than he should have. Curtis's cousin, Harland, swore he knew Curtis and Christine were involved in an affair. He said the romance had continued from their high school days, but in secret. Harland also claimed he had actually seen Christine drop by his house looking for Curtis a few days before she was murdered. Was this actually true? The cousin said Curtis wouldn't eat and lost a lot of weight since the Walker family killing. He also acted extremely nervous. Harland definitely suspected his cousin of killing the Walkers. He described Curtis as a man of violence with a rotten temper. Plus he owned a gun, a .22 caliber pistol. Don McLeod, the friend that first discovered the grisly crime, has also been under suspicion for over 60 years. He claims that some townsfolk and neighbors still think he murdered the Walker family, even though he's been declared innocent after DNA tests performed in 2005. The hunt for the murderer has continued for many years, and in early 2023, the bodies of Cliff and Christine were exhumed to provide more DNA evidence. The detectives plan to use a CT scanner to examine the bones of the skeletons with the hope of gathering more facts about the fatal injuries of the couple. But to me, the most bizarre fact in this case is that the killer stole the couple's marriage license. Because oddly enough, Christine and Cliff's license mysteriously turned up, albeit many years later in 2013, along with other family possessions inherited by a niece of Cliff's. More DNA tests were done to these family members, but provided no answers. And no one had any idea how the marriage license had gotten there, or who had put it there. Where was the license hidden all of these years, and who hid it? Was it kept as a trophy? So evidently, whoever killed the Walker family must have been a relative. Stealing the marriage license indicates the killer resented the fact that Christine married someone, and that he wasn't the husband. He wanted to somehow wipe away the evidence of the marriage, and thus killed the children produced by the union of Christy and Cliff Walker. So then nothing was left on this earth of the marriage. The rape indicates the murder of Christine is based on the anger of a rejected lover. He wanted to punish her for betraying him. And then we have the missing Drum Majorette uniform, Christine's pride and joy, a memento of her happy and carefree times. Whoever did the murders understood only too well how she loved that uniform, and they must in some way be connected with Christine being a Drum Majorette. But there's another twist to this bizarre case. When the bodies were exhumed in 2023, Christine's diamond wedding ring still sparkled on her finger. If the murderer took the couple's wedding license, why did he not take Christine's wedding ring? Interesting facts to consider. Authorities and families still wonder, who did kill the beautiful Christine and her lovely family in cold blood? Perhaps we will never know. If you've enjoyed this episode of Ominous and Grim and want more shocking histories and dark mystery, don't forget to follow this podcast, share this episode to your friends, and review us on your favorite platform. Finally, sign up at ominousandgrim.com for members-only benefits. That's OMINOUSANDGRYMM.com. And until next episode, don't look behind you.